doofus dads, right? I mean, that's all we ever see. And I'm okay with poking fun at dad.
Yeah.
But it's every show, and you and I talked about it, from Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin,
right.
and those are funny, but it's every show. And I think and I want to get your take on this, what concerns me is my sons, what do they watch on television?
Right.
Whether it's Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, or all shows, what they're seeing, and media is powerful, that dad's an idiot.
That's
dad's
exactly
a doofus. I hope I'm giving another example at home. Right. Maybe not all the time, but I'm trying.
And look, the best example they're ever going to get is from you, because they're going to learn from you.
Right.
But a lot of the dads I talked to said the same thing. They said, pop culture does give kids messages. Some boys out there are going to think that that's the low bar he's expected to rise to. Some girls out there will grow up to become women who have very low expectations for how good fathers their husbands will be.
So what was the inspiration for putting together a conference like this? What drove you to want to get into this sort of issue set?
Yeah, so I run a fraternity called Exit with a group of guys, and we were watching Tucker Carlson's documentary, The End of Men, which featured Roy National.
That's right.
And we thought, we knew several of those people, and we thought there's a bigger conversation to be had where it's, yes, I think that the medical.
So this is all Tucker's fault.
It's all Tucker's fault.
It's all coming.
We tried to grab him. I think he's out of town, but
it's hard to pin that guy down.
It is indeed. So we thought, instead of just the medical side of it, what if we talked about, the challenge of dating, the challenge of getting married, the challenge of staying married, of raising a family. Like, there's all kinds of dimensions to this problem, and so we thought, let's bring everybody together that we possibly can to address it. And so we had our last one in December 2023, and now we're doing it again this weekend.
But this is incredible because, and something that I do plan to address, and thank you for allowing me to come and speak at the dinner tonight, is that, there's a civilizational issue, but there's a phrase that we say at church, even in the Latin Mass churches, that I think applies here. And we say, if your church ain't crying, it's dying. If your church ain't crying, it's dying. Well, guess what? If your civilization ain't crying, it's dying. The Chinese understand this. India understands this. Russia understands this. Countries all around the world, Hungary, of course, they all understand this, that if you want your civilization to continue, you must produce children. It seems like a very basic thing to say, and probably something not that radical. It's something I think we all sort of inherently understand when we're children, and yet something sort of happens as we get older where we just sort of forget that and run away with it. We've been talking about the Snow White debacle here over the last couple of weeks, but even then, in a traditional story, the archetypal story of Snow White, the woman's virtue that she is protecting from the evil queen, who's then come and saved by a knight. I mean, that's it right there. That's it right there. There's a reason these traditional stories are handed down to us through hundreds of years and obviously even thousands of years of the story of the damsel in distress and the knight. There's a reason we have that, and yet modernity has sort of shattered all of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think that the way that things are breaking apart, it's messing with people's just fundamental understanding of themselves. And I think child rearing is being treated nowadays, so when I mentioned that I have 6 kids, you get treated like it's a weird hobby for some subculture of people. And it's like as close to the root of the human experience as you can get. It's like the most fundamental human thing.
Having 5 or more children was completely normal up until 70 years ago.
Right.
Up until the pill, basically.
Well, yeah. And so I would almost turn it on its head, and I would say I'm not having kids to save civilization. I'm trying to save civilization for my kids. And I think,
love that.
And I think
Love that.
it's like, and that often gets misconstrued. It's like people are like, you're looking at these bar charts and line graphs, and you're trying to make the data, get the numbers right. And that's not what it's about at all. It's about our families. And the problem is that all these bar charts and data are showing us that there's a massive problem coming for our kids. And so when I look at the dating situation, or how many millennials, how many Gen Z are actually having kids, I'm thinking about my kids who are kind of next at bat. And I couldn't possibly just sit on my hands and not try to build something better for them. And so that's what we're about, is getting people together to address this problem. And, I'm not a PhD. I don't pretend to have the answers on any of this. That's why I wanted to bring together as broad of a group of people as I possibly could to look at it from every angle we could think of and try to find a solution.
Well, and it's also, and we talked about at the beginning of the program here, that this has been an issue that it's not, by the way, just us looking at the stats and the numbers. No, it's the bean counters, it's the bureaucrats,
Right.
and it's the multinational corporations. And so their response is when they saw this happening, when they saw this decline in the birth rates coming, what they decided to then do was open the floodgates and say, let's import as many third worlders as possible, or just anybody who wants to come into the country. Obviously, there are priorities to this. You can see European migration is very, very hard to come in if you're European, but if you're someone from anywhere in the global south, it's perfectly easy to come to the United States. This is obviously done for economic reasons, because in order to sustain the welfare state that they've created, in order to sustain the global capitalist markets that have been created, you need a continual influx of people and this growing and ever expanding GDP, which of course is always being predicated on simply people as being cogs in some machine somewhere. And this is where I think MAGA and populism and MAGA really all sort of unite, because wait a minute, so we're not interchangeable units. As a matter of fact, we are real people with a real history, with real civilization, and the idea that you can just mix and match everything, it's completely bonkers. It's by the way, it's non-biblical for anyone who's ever read the Tower of Babel. God created the nations, God created the languages, and the point being is that this is all ordained for some higher reason. And when you ask about the breakdowns of so many of these different systems in our country, go back to the family unit. I said this before. The family unit is the oldest institution that we have evidence for on planet Earth. You can go back to they find these caves, and the anthropologists, they dig up the bones, and what do they find in them? Right, 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago. Mom, dad, kids. It's right there.
Right. Yeah, and you have to get people back to an understanding of themselves as part of families. And I think one of the things that's the biggest challenge we face right now is the sense that you see this with the 4B movement in South Korea. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am, actually.
This idea that women
It's
are
communist.
using all these. Yes, well, I mean, implicitly, certainly. And
Well, it takes its name. I have a little spin on that. This video went viral talking about it, because the 4B, so B is bu, which in Mandarin, similar to the Korean, is no. So the four no's. Well, the four no's campaign is something that literally came out of the Chinese Cultural Revolution.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's basically women and men both, and this is, it's you can see the charts. It's like women are profoundly radicalizing toward the left, and men are sort of slightly declining toward the
And so
right.
the four B's, I'm trying to remember, it's something like it's no marriage, no kids.
I think it's like don't date.
Yeah, don't date, and it's completely hard.
Right. And what I see that's the problem with that is like men and women cannot think of themselves as like adversarial political constituencies.
No.
Like, we have to think of ourselves as families. We have to understand
And
that
there's so much of that, and
are entwined.
there's so much of that, and we've been Joshua Lysek, who I work with, has been talking about this a lot. That we've sort of won the fight against third wave feminism, but second wave feminism is still there. And I think you're exactly right that it's pit men and women against each other, and that's always been sort of at the kernel of it. It's not about they say it's about women's liberation. They say it's women can be in the workforce. Okay, fine, but why do you have to be adversarial?